Tennessee Titans are on the clock, and I think that we all generally know, I think, where they're going to go, and it's Cam Ward from Miami. He's been assumed to be the number one pick for a long time, and I am not going to change that now as we get into the late stages here, as there's a lot of smoke and mirrors being thrown around. Tennessee addressed its hole at left tackle by bringing in Dan Moore from Pittsburgh to protect Cam Ward. So this fits in a lot of ways, and you guys know how I feel about Cam. Live arm, he can stretch the field, attack every blade of grass, as Daniel said it, which I thought was a great way of putting it. He's a bit of a gunslinger, and that's really the only thing that gets him in trouble, is that he thinks he can make every single throw on the field, and there are times when he can put the ball in a precarious spot. But other than that, I'm a huge fan of Cam Ward. I love his story. I love his backstory, his road to this point, and he's going to be my top pick in the draft. At number 2, now we start getting some intrigue, because Cleveland, New York, 2 and 3. Where are we going? Do we have a second quarterback taken in the top 3? I think that's the biggest question. I teased this last week in a couple of those other episodes. I am not going quarterback. So with Cleveland, I'm going to go Travis Hunter, the wide receiver corner from Colorado, Heisman Trophy winner. When you listen to Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, he references Travis Hunter as a unicorn. And I don't think that they're going to put a limit on where he is and the amount of football that he's going to play on each side of the football. The Browns can get substantially better on both sides of the ball. Again, you guys know exactly how I feel about Travis. I think he's the best wide receiver in the draft. I think he's the best corner in the draft. So when you're talking about value to your organization and to your team from a production standpoint, there is no greater value than the best player on my board, Travis Hunter, and I think that Cleveland selects him at number 2. At number 3, I think everyone's going to be interested. Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? I actually think the Giants are going to go to Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State. Listen, again, I've talked a lot about Abdul Carter. This guy's phenomenal. I think that he could have an even bigger impact than Micah Parsons in the National Football League, partly because he's a bit longer and he's more raw on the edge. He can go back and play the second level. He can go to the edge. He really only played out there 1 year, and he was a monster. Whether it was playing Ohio State, playing Notre Dame in the playoff, I mean, every single game, the opposition would have to game plan for number 11. Explosive get off and just a game rucker. And I really love what they could build, by the way. Speaking of the Giants, think about that defensive front. So you would have Abdul Carter, which you can move around and you can create, again, a Parsons-like impact. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence. Now you're starting to mimic what Philadelphia was able to do in terms of a front four that can put pressure on anybody in the National Football League. I know that they need a quarterback. Unfortunately, I think that somebody might beat them to the punch later in the first round. That's a professional tease to wait until the end of the first round. Okay, number 4. This is the worst possible scenario for New England, is to see Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter go 2 and 3. They are going to be desperate for Cleveland or New York to select Shedeur Sanders, because that would leave Hunter or Carter for them, which they would gladly run to the podium and take. But if Hunter and Carter are off the board, save trading down, which I almost did here, I just don't know if anyone's going to jump up to this point for any particular player. So I think New England's going to be stuck, and I think that they're going to overdraft a player that I really like, but at 4, this is going to be a bit of a stretch. Will Campbell, offensive tackle from LSU. Will's an excellent player. I really like him. 4, again, is incredibly high. The future for the Patriots is Drake May, so why not give him some more protection up front? I think that's an easy selection. Again, I just think that they're going to be thinking, boy, we could get him at 7, 8, 9, 10, potentially, or even an Armand Membou and select some offensive tackle. But I think they're going to be forced into picking here, and they're going to go to protect May with Will Campbell. So that's number 4. At number 5, here we go. Are we ready for this? It's the first big surprise, I think, of my mock. Not going to be surprised if Jacksonville runs up there and takes Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. New head coach Liam Cohen, new GM James Gladstone. Jags need to put playmakers around Trevor Lawrence. And as I'm talking to people around the NFL about this draft, man, everybody loves Ashton Jeanty, and rightly so. Rightly so. The guy was running around on that blue turf like he had Vaseline rubbed all over him. He's like, you can't tackle him. He's like the greasy chicken in Rocky. He is excellent. His balance, his vision, he can catch it, even though he didn't catch it a lot last year. Remember, I talked about this idea of Boise giving him more rushes than anything as far as touches go for that rushing yards mark. Look at what he did against Oregon, to Daniel Jeremiah's point last week when we started talking about Ashton Jeanty. Look at what he did to Washington State. Like, he did it against teams that were very good. Oregon was undefeated and the number one team in the country until they got beat by Ohio State. So just watch out for this. Travis Etienne is entering the final year of his rookie deal. Are you really going to want to pay him a lot more when you could get a player that might be even better on a rookie contract? Jeanty would be the highest drafted running back since Saquon went number 2 overall in 2018. That worked out not for the Giants who selected him, but that worked out for the Eagles. All right, now we go to number 6. The Las Vegas Raiders. I've got them taking Mason Graham, tackle from Michigan, in a division with Mahomes and Herbert and now Bo Nix in Denver. I think having a dominant defensive lineman, in particular in the interior, that can push the pocket into the lap of those quarterbacks is advantageous. This is what this kid can do. I think he's going to be an outstanding player. In a lot of ways, he's been, at least in my estimation, as I've evaluated college football, he's been one of the most disruptive interior defensive linemen since Ndamukong Suh. Heck, I mean, he basically beat Ohio State last year with the help of maybe a banged-up quarterback and some interesting play selections. But he's amazing. Got Geno Smith on offense. Pete Carroll comes in, gets this organization back on track. How? Front to back, inside out. That's how you build defense. Front to back, inside out. Who's that? Mason Graham. He's like a cornerstone piece. Now it's the Jets at number 7. The Jets are always an interesting one because, again, they're the Jets. I'm going to go Armand Membou from Missouri. I'm going to go offensive line here. I don't have a ton of confidence in this pick, but I'm going to go with Membou. He's getting a lot of chatter in draft circles. You can put him at right tackle where he played in college. You can pair him with Olu Fashanu at tackle and potentially have your bookends set for this foreseeable future. And you can be protecting Justin Fields. That's not a bad idea. Remember, Fields did not have a ton of protection in Chicago, as Bears fans know. And maybe you give him protection and he takes the next step. Think of all the quarterbacks in the National Football League who had almost like a second lease on life at a second organization, a third organization, and then succeeded. I mean, look at a guy like Baker Mayfield. Maybe Fields could have that. Why not give him some protection up front? All right, Carolina at number 8. Probably should have had more edge players go here because they're always in such need. You know that the NFL decision makers want edge players. So I'm thinking here, I'm like, all right, the Panthers had the worst scoring defense in the league last year. They've got to get better on that side of the ball. Jaylen Walker is the pick here. So Jaylen Walker from Georgia goes at number 8. He's a do-it-all linebacker. He can play inside. He makes a lot of tackles, but he's also a really explosive player, and you can go down and put him on the edge as a pass rusher. So to me, where they are defensively and what he can do from a versatility standpoint makes a lot of sense. Jaylen Walker, the Bulldog, goes to Carolina. Now we get to number 9. All right, don't have Shedeur Sanders off the board, and here we go. This is where I think the draft gets very interesting because Cleveland still is going to need to address the quarterback position. New York still needs to address the quarterback position, and probably Pittsburgh needs to address the quarterback position, and yet largely, there's only one guy that we would all say, including me, say like, okay, he's certainly in the top 2. New Orleans needs to address the quarterback issue, and I think that they do it right here. I think this is a good spot for Shedeur Sanders. He's going to go to New Orleans at number 9. Derek Carr's shoulder means that they've got a huge need. Why not go to a dome and an offensive-oriented coach? I think that this would be a great position for Shedeur Sanders, and you know how I feel about him as a player. I think Shedeur is a great player. In fact, if it was me, listen, this is a mix of what I think is going to happen and what I'm hearing. If it was me picking, I want to be very clear. Shedeur would be my top quarterback off the board. Okay? I think he's that good. I know that there are people out there that totally disagree with that take, but again, when you look at what he does when the pocket is clean, it's surgical. When you look at what he does when the pocket is not clean, which is often, he's a magician. He escapes, extends the play, keeps his eyes down the field, and then he's so accurate throwing the football down the field. He can fit the football in a shoebox. I think his game is going to translate much better to the National Football League than maybe it even did at college at times. I really do. He processes information. He's a great decision maker. He took care of the football. He made plays down the field. Shedeur, New Orleans at number 9. At number 10, here we go with the Bears. All right, Bears fans, what do we want? What do we not want? I don't care what you want. You need offensive line help. So that's where I'm going with the Chicago Bears. Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. I think that this guy, outside of one game, really, or maybe 1.5 games against Georgia, he probably would be the number 1 tackle on the board. But yes, he did struggle against Georgia. The entire team struggled against Georgia, let's face it. And because of that, he kind of moved off of that perch as a guy that I thought could have been OT number 1, if you will, offensive tackle number 1 in this draft. Really good player. I like him a lot. Ben Johnson comes from Detroit, who had one of the best offensive lines in the league. I could see him trying to bolster that area. They upgraded the interior of the offensive line through some trades and free agency. They added 3 veterans, starters at both guard positions and center. In order to get the best out of Caleb, I think you got to protect him. You got to protect the investment. Caleb needs to work. If Caleb doesn't work, it's like, well, we're square one again. So you got to give him the resources to try to work. And part of that is the offensive line, which they've already invested in, and now they can double down on that in the draft. Kelvin Banks Jr. at number 10. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.